Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Mission Z Empowering Change podcast, brought to you by our sponsors, Long Island Prevention and Resilience Enrichment Program for Drug Abuse Prevention and Mental Health Awareness, and Pioneer Sports, who want you to stop doing it yourself. They help schools, camps, and municipalities start, run, and grow a successful sports program. You can check them out at playpioneersports.com. I'm Paul Vecchione. It's great to be here with you today as we bring our conversation to you to discuss the issues that Generation Z, our children, are facing today. The Mission Z podcast is here to bring people out there who are dedicated to making a difference, to come speak with us and tell us what they're doing and how their work is impacting our world. And of course, the difference they make to others and how a call to action can empower change. So that's what we want to do today, and we have a very special episode of the podcast. We're thrilled to bring on Deb Doherty and Mike Colton from DDS4Vets, dedicated, devoted solutions aimed at helping veterans bridge the gap that they face to get the services that they are entitled to. We have a lot of struggling veterans out there, and Deb and Mike are kind enough to come on to give us some of their time to tell us what they're doing. We want to learn all about this amazing organization, so let's welcome them on to the Mission Z podcast. Deb and Mike, how are you doing today?
Doing good. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you very much, Paul, for having us.
My pleasure. I just wanted to, start here by saying I love the work you guys are doing. I have to give you the opportunity to tell us a little bit about the organization DDS4Vets and how it began, its mission and purpose. So, Deb, why don't you start? I know you're the founder, so give us some things, some information about DDS, how it started, and what it's doing today.
Okay, thank you. It started in 2019. I actually wasn't even going to, or had the interest of starting a nonprofit. I just wanted to get the information out there that our veterans needed help, especially with the PTSD. I learned a lot about service dogs through Matt Gleeman, who has a service dog, Charlie Brown, and he is paralyzed from the chest down. And it was very intriguing as far as how it has really helped him with everyday tasks and even mentally giving him purpose, where he had to get up in the morning, because he had Charlie Brown, and Charlie Brown's taking care of him and he's taking care of Charlie Brown. But the PTSD was a real concern of mine. My brother was in the Navy, came back, he was injured. And he suffered a lot. I did not know what PTSD was. He ended up on prescriptions and went to street drugs, and then he's gone today. And so I really didn't want any other families going through that. Again, I had no idea what PTSD was. I would argue with him when he would call, because I couldn't figure out what the changes were. And so again, he was a younger sibling, so it was like, I don't know what your issue is. You've got such a great career, and what's going on. So I started DDS4Vets, and it just took off. It just took off. I had people calling me that I never knew. I never knew, but they were given my name through somebody. And I was lucky enough to meet actually at the St. Lucie, New York Mets Stadium. There was a kind of like what would you call it, Mike? Like a trade show, or where you have all the tents and the tables and everyone has their information out there. And that's where I met Mike Colton and just started talking. And we just hooked up. He is our canine trainer. He's also our executive VP of DDS4Vets. And it's just amazing what the dogs, I'm gonna have Mike get into that, how the dogs really help the veteran. And what it is so DDS4Vets, we have hooked up with other partners and programs that have been proven to help the PTSD. There's no cure for PTSD. But if we can go ahead and help them and get them in the program and help them, that when they're starting to slip down that dark place, they can go ahead and pull themselves back up. So we've been fortunate enough to hook up with General Labooty, who has Horses and Heroes. So that is counseling with the horse therapy. And then also too with Wounded Warrior Relief, Mike Doherty, and he has all these different programs as well. Also too, we hooked up with Michael Geyer. He's an actor, producer, director out in LA. So he produced the documentary Wounded Heroes, and all the different programs that help with the PTSD, but you're hearing stories from the veteran themselves.
Right.
It was such a hit that now he's made a movie of it. And so we're very fortunate to be part of that project because we want to hit the masses. And I will tell you, as far as with that documentary, matter of fact, I want to send you a copy of that. You really need to see it. You're going to sit there for 3 hours. It's long, but we went ahead and had a viewing, and we had 100 guys in there, veterans, and Mike can to attest to this. There wasn't a dry eye in there. And they all went up to Michael Geyer and thanked him for doing that. And so some of them was able to hook up with DDS4Vets. We've been able to give them counseling, but it makes such a significant difference with them. Their biggest concern when they do get out of the military, and we're trying to help them with that military lifestyle to the civilian lifestyle, is they have no purpose. They feel they have no purpose. But what we want to do is we want to help them dig in deep because they do have a purpose. They just don't realize it yet.
Right.
And so we help them figure out what that purpose is. And it's been really amazing. It really is. And they really need our help. We're not even scraping the surface. And but it's wonderful to be able to help.
Yeah. And, I definitely want to get into, the actual, duties and services that the dogs perform. But Mike, I kind of wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of tell us how you're involved with, with DDS. I know you're retired law enforcement, but you've worked with, in the canine unit, you said, for most of your career. So what's your role with DDS? How do you get involved? And, what are some of the things that you do, to kind of get these dogs out there?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, like Deb said, we had a kind of a chance encounter. It was a safety fest in the parking lot of the Met Stadium spring training facility in Port St. Lucie. And I was set to retire that year. It was probably March, April of 2021. And after about 33 and a half years or so, I figured I was ready to retire from law enforcement. And I had a little booth set up, and Deb walked up and handed me her business card, and we started a conversation. She said, "I'll be in touch." And I had no idea how much that encounter was going to change my future. At that point, I hadn't even really thought about the concept of service dogs, training service dogs, the need, how I could do something using my background to maybe, help others. And the more that I was around Deb and understood her mission, and with absolute buy-in, I got more and more and more involved. Started out kind of as an ancillary thing, and one thing led to another. And before I knew it, I had a dog living in my house that I was training for a young man who was one of our nation's finest. He was one of the young men that was involved in the withdrawal at Abbey Gate in Afghanistan, and was wounded in action when the suicide bomber detonated. And I found a local dog in a local humane society shelter that was set, actually, probably would not be here today. She probably would have been euthanized. She wasn't adopting well to shelter life at all, and they didn't think she would be an adoptable dog. But a young lady there saw something special in her and contacted me, and I went out, tested her, took her on a little weekend excursion play date, and never took her back. So she lived in the house for about a year. We got her all tied in with that young man, and he's living his best life right now with that dog, and she's doing the same. So once I see results like that, it just, where do I go from there? I just got to keep climbing forward,
Sure. And I like I said, I definitely want to get into what the dog training, entails, and what they actually do with these, with these struggling vets. But, Deb, it's my understanding that suicide rates among, veterans are 22%, as much as 22% higher, among vets than the adult population, right? And 18% of those, returning from Afghanistan and Iraq, they don't do particularly well with the PTSD and things like that, right? So and obviously drug abuse and alcoholism is much higher among them as well. So can you just kind of talk about why that is, and what are some of the challenges that they face when they actually come home, from war? I mean, it's they're coming back from obviously hell on earth, I would think. And then kind of to be reacclimated to society where things are supposed to be normal. It's anything but normal for them, right?
That's true. You have to think about the stories that they have told us. Anybody would be in that mindset. And so they come back, they're feeling guilty, especially if they've lost any close brothers, sisters within the military, their unit. They feel guilty. Why did they survive? Again, they feel, what's their purpose? I think, Pete Hegseth, he stated it very well. You're in the service and you come back and all of a sudden you're in an apartment by yourself. And then it's, now what?
Right.
What do I do? There's no direction. Where in the military, you're scheduled. You know exactly what you need to do, when you have to do it, where you have to be. And you're surrounded by people that you trust, that are there. You know that you have their back, or they have your back, you have their back. And now all of a sudden you come home, and if you're single, you're in a place by yourself. And what happens, any of us, when we're sitting by ourselves or we're driving by ourselves, our mind's going and going, and all of a sudden you start bringing up things of the past, and then you kind of dwell on that.
Right.
But also too, if you're coming back to a family, and the thing is that why, military families, they understand, but a lot of it they don't understand. So what military families, especially parents, they need to realize, when your son or daughter goes into the military and they come back, they are not the same person.
Right.
100% they are not the same person. And they have a hard time. So the military guys, they have a hard time adjusting.
Right.
What are they going to do? And plus, think about it. More than likely, they join the military after high school. They don't know how to balance a checkbook. They don't know finances. They don't know budgets. And they're trained in one specific area. That's good for the military. But when they come out,
Then what?
and now you're in the real world, what are you going to do?
Right.
There's no, I don't want to say there's no job. There's some jobs, but the majority of the guys, they don't know what they're going to do, because what they were trained for in the military, there's no need. There's not a need for it in the civilian life.
Right.
So that makes it extremely difficult, and they don't like to ask for help.
Yeah.
I can't tell you that, and I'm sure Mike will attest to this too, is we know a specific veteran, the benefits of the dog. And many times we've been told, well, no, you know what? Give the dog to someone else. You know what? There's someone else worse than me. So, and we run into that all the time. They're always thinking about somebody else, but it's almost like they can't get past that it's time for us to serve them.
Right.
And they have a real hard time with that. And so that's what we break through that barrier. And Mike has a great saying that, with rescue dogs, the rescue dog becomes a rescuer. And it's so true. When Mike said that, it just really resonated with me. And I said, you are so right.
Yeah.
But they feel lost.
Yeah.
They feel lost. And a lot of them have short patience span.
Right.
And so that's a challenge.
So that why, I mean,
unfortunately, worlds today too, you have a lot of sarcastic people, and they don't understand.
sure. And
we live in a different world.
And it sounds like that lack of structure when they return, that they're so used to, and like you said, they don't feel like they have a purpose. But I can never really wrap my head around this, this fact. I took a Vietnam course in high school. The teacher, we learned all about the Vietnam War, the veterans returning, and how they were, kind of treated when they came home. I can never understand why, we ask these guys to go off and, into these foreign lands, and, sacrifice everything that everything that they've got, for this country. And then when they come back, there's not this, concerted effort to make sure that they're taken care of. And, I know you mentioned that a lot of it has to do with them, right? And they're, maybe they don't want to get help because they feel like they've kind of given into it. But I mean, we have the most resources of any country in the world. You would think, guys and gals coming back from these situations would just have a support system that makes sure that they're taken care of. And that's just not the case, right?
We do have a lot. If it wasn't for the nonprofits, the nonprofits do more than what our government's doing for them, and I'm
But
sorry, that's just the way that it is.
but that's what I mean. Shouldn't we
And that's
have
what drives me crazy.
right? And you know what? Shouldn't we have more of a support structure from the government? From,
Yes.
I mean, because it just doesn't make sense to me that you're asking 18, 19, 20-year-old kids to go off to war, and then when you come back, they've got nothing, you know?
That's right.
Mm.
They cut the budgets on there, and I mean, going to the VA. Now, some people have a great experience with the VA hospital, and so it's aggravating with the VA hospital. But then again, on the flip side, they're short-staffed.
Mhm. Mhm.
They don't
Yeah.
have the necessities that they need
Right.
because they keep cutting back and cutting back. So it's being stuck between a rock and a hard place, to be honest.
Yeah, and that's just infuriating. And I'm sure, I mean, I don't have any
Mhm.
members of my family who were in the military, but obviously you did, and you work with people who were. So I can't imagine how frustrating that is. So, in that case, thank goodness for DDS4Vets, right? Because I mean, you're giving these, servicemen and women an opportunity to come back and, really receive this kind of therapy from the dogs. So let's talk a little bit about these dogs. I mean, they sound like amazing animals. They're heroes, helping our heroes, I think, you're right. So their value must just be indispensable. So tell us about the dogs, how they're helping these vets, what they do, what their role is. And I know Mike can tell us about that too, and in terms of the training. But so what do they actually do, being there for these struggling veterans?
Well, there's just several things that they do, like tasks or work that they actually provide, services that they provide to help mitigate some of the trauma, some of the issues that their recipient is going through. Some of those things are deep pressure therapy is one, where they actually apply pressure of their body weight on the person, either across their lap, or if they're laying on the ground or on the bed or something, they can come and lay across their chest. Helps to kind of just helps to bring them back into the situation they're in, into the place they're in, the time they're in, because they disassociate sometimes and block things out, and they may not feel like getting up and going out, leaving the house. The simple act that the dog needs to go out, needs to move. I think Deb mentioned that a little while ago. I've heard that now a few times, how important that is to to I think one of the young men said it best. He said, he gets me off the couch.
Oh.
And, when you think about it like that, you think, well, that's such a simple thing, but it really isn't, because Deb alluded to it about how they have nothing but time. They're sitting there, they're thinking, their mind wanders, it races back to a time and a place, not a happy time or place. And they just fixate on that and become kind of disassociated from everything else going around them. Responsibilities fall by the wayside, self-care falls by the wayside. So the dogs actually learn to recognize those self-harmful behaviors and interrupt them. I actually train the dogs that if they're having a moment of anger, if they're yelling or pounding their fist on the table, the dog will actually come over to them and put a paw up on them. And instead of going the other way, like most dogs would do out of fear, these dogs come to them and try to interrupt that behavior. We have an issue, a big issue with nightmares. They may be able to trick their minds a little bit, if you will, during the day, find ways to stay active, busy, kind of forget about things, but it always seems to come find them at night. And another thing that the dogs will do is actually interrupt those nightmares. They learn to recognize the signs and the symptoms of that nightmare, whether it be the movement of the individual, the breathing changes. There are scents that are given off through the body that the dog learns to associate with. So the dog will actually come up onto the bed, and again, with that deep pressure therapy or with licking the face, that's one of the dogs does that really well. They'll interrupt that behavior and that nightmare and kind of bring them back to a happier, more comfortable place and time. And
That's
just
amazing.
there's scientific evidence the act of petting a dog releases oxytocin, and the oxytocin is what battles the cortisol, which is your survival stress hormone. And so just that simple act of the dog being there at the right time, the right place, recognizing that moment helps helps them, just
Right.
helps them cope with that and get past that.
Wow.
They can retrieve items, they can retrieve medications, they can flip light switches on. In the middle of the night, if they're having a nightmare, they can go up and bump a light switch to turn a light on so that, you know, the veteran can look around the room and see that they're in a safe place. We have one that opens drawers, closes drawers. She can retrieve medications if necessary, carries items, picks up items that may be dropped. Even as simple as if they're walking them with their leash and the leash slips out of their hand because maybe they don't have full dexterity or mobility, and bending over to pick it up may cause them to lose balance. The dog will retrieve the leash and bring it back to them. So simple little things like that.
Wow.
And then in the one thing we want to be able to do is allow them to go the places that they like to go, whether it be the gym, if they want to walk through the mall, if they want to go to a public event like a farmer's market or something like that. But the crowds can be a concern at times, depending on their particular their issues that they've encountered. So we teach the dogs that if there is a crowd of people or if people are moving to the front, the dog will actually walk in front and put its body between the handler and the people in front. They'll do the same for the back. So they cover them in the front, they cover them in the back.
Wow.
It's like a blocking behavior, just to kind of give them that little spatial buffer, if you will, to make them feel a little bit more comfortable in those settings so that they can go and enjoy that whatever that event is. One young man actually called me one day and said, "Hey, guess where I was?" I said, "Where'd you go?" He said, "I went to a mall." He said, "I haven't been to a mall in years."
Wow.
And I went to a mall and it was great. He did great. He did everything I needed him to do. I had one little moment. He recognized it right away, got me through it, and I was able to hang out and spend the day at a mall. And, you know, you hear those stories. They can go to the gym, you know, and the dog's right there with them. I had a young man he has some back pain and things. He went to get a massage. And the dog actually recognized that in that moment, he must have been like, "Oh yeah, that hurts." And the dog came up to provide support for him. And
Wow.
I have a picture of that dog actually resting its head on him while he's in the middle of receiving his massage. But it's those simple little things that people don't realize that
Yeah.
these dogs can help them do. And then that purpose,
And
that sense of purpose is just huge.
absolutely. And you know, I know everybody in you know, in the United States has a dog, or at least, you know, most people do. I have a little Scottish Terrier running around, but he's not flipping light switches and, you know, getting you know, and he's not retrieving medication. So I would imagine the training for these dogs has got to be you know, intense and extensive. So talk about that if you can, and how do these dogs make the cut? Like, how do you know that, you know, these are going to be trusted animals to go with these, you know, with these veterans who obviously have a host of issues, right?
Yeah, we're kind of in a good situation where I tend to know who the potential recipient is going into it. So I can kind of, with my experiences with matching canine handlers with dogs, part of that matching process is matching a dog that meets their temperament, their personality, their home life, their experience, their background. So I kind of try to do the same thing. One thing we have noticed is these, especially the young men, they really seem to like a certain appearance in a dog. They like the German Shepherd look, the Belgian Malinois look. It's almost part of the therapy to have that dog that kind of has that carriage about it and that look about it. So, an example, my daughter lives 20 hours away from me in Texas, but she works with a local rescue and it's nothing but German Shepherds. So the dog that I have currently in my program came from her rescue. It's a beautiful little female Belgian Malinois. She's just an amazing animal. So my daughter helps me screen them. She grew up with police service dogs. She understands the temperament of a working dog. And it's really a little science and a little art. It's hard to describe and define. Sometimes it's just silly sounding, and I know it's a little Disney sounding, but sometimes you can just see it in the eyes. The eyes are the window to the soul, you know, so you can just see a dog that just has something about it. Other ones are a little bit more work. But I'm just looking for certain behaviors, retrieving behaviors, focus and attention on me. They can't be overreactive to outside noises and sights and sounds and smells. I have to be able to bring them back to me, even when there's something more powerful out in the environment. They have to focus on me. So I look for those types of behaviors and then try to, again, match them back to the potential recipient.
That's so cool. And how long does a typical training take?
It all depends on really the tasks that are required and the dog's propensity to learn those tasks. Just like us, some are quick learners. Some it's just a couple reps and they have it, and then others maybe need a little bit more time. But on average, minimum time for the industry is somewhere in the 6 to 8 months for a PTS dog. If you're looking at full mobility, it could be over 2 years. It all depends really. Anywhere in there, probably 6 to 18 months is what we look at on average for our program.
Fascinating. So tell us about the impact. I mean, is it working, guys? Give us some feedback from some of the veterans, that are involved in your program. I'm sure, I had watched one of the videos that you had sent over when we first kind of connected here. And I mean, there was a 5-minute video and I showed everybody that I know. I'm like, you guys got to watch just this 5 minutes because what an incredible organization. And, the impact you're having on these guys has just got to be incredible, guys. So talk about that and what's some of the feedback?
Well, I think with just a couple of things that came to my mind when Mike was talking. We had one of our veterans, because part of our program is that when it's training the dog, but also too, we cover all the costs. This is at no cost to the veteran, but we also fly them in from wherever they are. Right now, we're working, the ones we've been working with are from Camp Pendleton. And it was amazing when one of them flew in this past October. He was hell-bent. He was not going to walk into a Walmart. He wasn't going to walk into a store. Nope, can't do that, can't do that. And by the time he left, he was just going up and down the aisles with a dog and just, so those are things, and maybe some people that don't understand, like you're walking into a store, okay, come on, again, you haven't walked those shoes, you haven't worn those boots. So those simple things is difficult for them because you never know who's behind you. And so, and then another one from Camp Pendleton that we'll be bringing out in a few months to get with the dog that Mike's training right now. The dog's name actually was Sheila. And he actually we brought him in October to our Believe in the Mission formal gala where we present the dog. And he went up to Mike and asked for a favor. And of course, Mike was like, sure, what is it? And he said, do you mind if I call her Hope? And, and he says, yeah. And Mike obviously graciously said yes, and asked why. And he said, because the dog brought him hope. He wasn't seeing hope at all. It was, and I have to tell you that all the veterans that we've helped that have received dogs, suicide was on their mind. And one of them actually even tried. So it's an impact. And so if we can go ahead and just help one at a time, I mean, we'd love to, of course, we want to help the masses. Of course, anybody would. But I think the hardest thing for my mindset is you have to be patient, and it's just helping that one at a time. Because when you help that one and he's not taking his life, that's just huge. It's really huge. And that's what we're here for. But the dogs are absolutely incredible. And Mike Colton, I mean, I call it magic. I never knew the psychology, and
it sounds like magic. I gotta say, I mean,
it is, and
just
he's the patience, and when you see the dogs, and I mean, they are so tuned into him. It's like eyeball to eyeball, and they're on the dime. I mean, he's. But obviously he's been doing it for over 30 years. So, so we're very blessed where we have the best of the best trainer, with us, and it's a cost. I'll have Mike go into the cost of it. A lot of people will say, oh, it's that much money. Well, break it down. When you break it down, you realize, you know what?
Yeah.
It's not a lot of money.
So let's actually talk about that, because I was curious what the actual process is to get somebody who's struggling, the dog that they would need, right? Between the, so how does that work when somebody comes home and, let's say from wherever, and they're struggling and they hear about DDS4Vets? What do they need to do? What's the process? How does it, start? And how does it all kind of, play out, Deb?
They contact us and I send them an application. I go over the application and then I hand it off to Mike. And then Mike has interviews with them. They do have to go through counseling. Their counselor or physician needs to sign off that they're in a position to receive a dog, because you have to remember, we're responsible for the dog too. So it's not just a human being, but we're entrusting that veteran with the dog as well, and both of them are taking care of each other. So we have to really make sure that we cover that all the bases, there. But Mike, why don't you go into what you're looking for and some of our processing and the cost, but what it all entails, please.
Sure. I would say for us or for me, I just have to make sure that the person understands what the dog can do for them and can't do for them. That's equally important. That they can care for the dog, that they have the means to care for a dog, they have the home life that supports that, because these are larger dogs. So they have to make sure that, they're not living in a high-rise apartment somewhere in a tiny space and they don't have room to walk and exercise the dog, or, we're just looking at all of these things, trying to bring everything together, because again, we want the best for both. And we don't want to put the dogs in a situation where they're not going to be well taken care of, but they're also in a situation where they might not benefit that person, the way they think. These are service dogs. These are working dogs. They're classified that way by federal and state laws, and they're not emotional support animals. They're well-mannered support animals for sure, but more than that as well. So they have to be willing and able to maintain the training regimen that goes into that. Every handler receives follow-up training schedule, if you will, so that they can maintain that training. When they come here with us, I will train the dog to a certain degree, and then it kind of gets personal, so that the handler themselves need to be able to train with them in those certain tasks and certain work so that the dog performs it for them, not just me. Mm-hmm. So they'll spend anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks here with us, living with the dog, doing all the exercises every day, from the most basic things to the most complex tasks. And they have to be willing and able to continue that, to maintain that throughout the life of that dog. Otherwise, the dog just reverts back to being a dog, if they don't maintain it. So there's a sense of responsibility on them too. And that comes back to that sense of purpose. Right. In order to have that partner that helps them negotiate the challenges in life moving forward, they have to put their part in too. They can't just expect the dog to be there and fulfill that. The dog needs that same interaction and maintenance training throughout the life of the dog.
Yeah. So are you allowed to talk about how many people are in the program right now? Like, how many dogs do you actually have out, involving them, with these veterans? Because it sounds like it's a long process. It's, it's an expensive process, but you're, obviously getting these dogs out to the people who need them. So how is the organization working now in terms of volume, and how do you look to kind of make it, so that it's more accessible?
That's a really, really, really good question. As far as the need, there are nearly 20 million veterans out there. Most accounts, 1/3 have some type of substantial post-combat mental health challenge. 20% suffer from PTSD, and about 1 in 5 service dogs out there right now, they perform tasks that would benefit them. The problem is less than 1% of those folks in need are actually receiving that benefit right now. So we're a very small organization. We're localized. We're trying to grow, but I literally train these dogs and house these dogs in my living room. So I don't have like a facility that where I could house 3, 4, 5, 6 at a time. And even the organizations that are much larger than us and have that available to them, some of them have multiple campuses throughout the nation, and they do great work, but they still have a 2-year waiting list just because the need is so great. So, and a lot of these folks don't have 2 years. So we're really just trying to, like Deb said it best, if it's one at a time, it's one at a time. We're not cutting corners, but we do have a vision to try to move forward, to get out of the living room, to have a facility, to have a location where we can maybe have a few dogs going at the same time, and we can benefit more people if we can double or triple our numbers. Currently, we have one dog training, two dogs in the program, one with another trainer, and then I have one with me. We have 3 dogs in the last year and a half that we've provided to veterans.
Right.
So that's where we are right now.
So, Deb, how has the reception been from the armed forces? I know you have formulated some relationships, right, with officials in the various branches, but I mean, are they willing to help? Can they help with the money raising? I mean, how does that work with what you're doing, you know, and how they've kind of embraced, you know, your work?
So we deal a lot right now with Battalion West, because actually the dogs, the people that have received the dogs, they were in that Afghanistan exit. So Camp Pendleton, they have been great, and they have given us the name of the military person, and they put us in connection and in contact with them. So, but what we're doing now is, as we're growing, I'm getting a lot of referrals now. So our name is getting out there. Like Mike was saying, we're not the biggest, and what, for me, I always tell people, I'm not looking at being the biggest. I'm not looking at numbers, just push out the numbers. I want DDS4Vets to be known as the most effective, because it's all about the veterans. I'm not worried about anything else, or I'm concerned with that veteran, and that we're going to go ahead and give him the best service. Those dogs range anywhere from 25,000 to 60,000. And so, but think about that. It's anywhere from, I know Mike said 6 months, but probably, Mike, would you say probably 9 to 18 months? It would be, I think, a good number as far as with a month. So when you calculate it that way, they're with Mike 24/7. But also what's included in there, we fly the veteran here and we put him up in a condo. We pay for their food. We pay for their transportation. So, and we're with them while they're here, and they're here 4 to 6 weeks.
Right.
It all depends on how they're progressing. And again, Mike's the one that signs off with them. And a lot of people don't understand that. They think that, oh, you train the dog, here's the dog. It doesn't work that way. Or you've had this dog in training so long, it's not just giving a dog away. There's just so much more to it. So our goal is to get acreage and to have our own facility, to have our own kennels, and to be able to also have either build like bunkhouses or tiny homes, where when we bring in the veteran, they have a place to stay, but they're going to be with the dog 24/7.
Right.
But we also want to have a building where, you know what, they like to hang out with each other, just sit around and just hang out with each other. And we can have the counselors come in, just something where they can kick back and relax. And then General Labouty, he's talked to us. He wants part of the acreage to put the horses there. So we have the horse therapy there. We have everything there. We have another gentleman that is with the counseling. He wants to be able to have a small facility there. So basically, when they come in for the dog, they're there. We don't have to have them a condo here, training facility over here.
Yeah.
And
So
we
it's
just
like
really wanna have-
centralizing it. Yeah. It's
Right,
like, yeah,
right.
right. That's a great
And
idea.
so Mike is working now on sketching it out, and we have an architect that's going to help us to put that out there, so that when we have this building, it's going to have the simulated kitchen, the simulated bedroom, the simulated bathroom, because these dogs also too, if a veteran is in a wheelchair, if he falls out of that wheelchair, that dog also knows how to help him get back into that wheelchair. So there's just a lot of different facets to this, and a lot of different components that people don't realize. But like I said, our goal, if we can have our own facility where they can come in and we can have functions there. And when I say functions, it's not, yes, for people to have a good time, that's fine, but we want it educational. We want it informational. This is what's happening. This is who we are. This is what we can do.
Right.
And then it's just going to be up to them to whether they accept our help or not.
So, Mike, I know that it took you, many years to be, as trained and as a professional as you are with training the dogs, right? So, is it feasible to have you training others to do your amazing work so that you can expand, basically on what you're trying to do here?
It's actually, that is my goal with each and every handler. I want the recipient of the dog, when they leave us, to basically be a trainer, to be able to, even start their next dog on their own if they had to be able to take I start them at the ground zero. The dog's already got it. They don't. But I have them start the same way I started the dog 6, 8, 10 months prior to that, and grow and work their way through that process for that entire 4 to 6 weeks that they're with us. So every day they have homework they have to do. We go out and we tackle new skills. It's the tasks. So there are a lot of different things. The dogs have to be well-mannered. They have to be able to walk through public. They can't, relieve themselves, whatever. They have to be able to get on an airplane, walk through security, something that simple with a wand and the wand beeping and people reaching down towards them. They have to be able to accept all that. They have to be able to lay quietly in a restaurant. The biggest compliment we get is when we get up to leave the table after eating a meal and the people next to us say, "Wow, I had no idea there was a dog down there." Exactly. That's what we're looking for, right? We want that well-mannered dog that's still they're on the job, they're paying attention, they're working, but they're also just quiet and well-mannered. So there's a lot that goes into that. But one of the young men that we talked about a little while ago, he actually learned so much and absorbed this so deeply that he went back home to his home state after getting out of the Marine Corps, and he's now training all his friends and family's dogs.
Amazing.
and
Amazing.
Working with his local police department and their canine unit. He just has such a grasp of what this is all about, and he's doing a phenomenal job. But that's my end goal, is that each one of them becomes a trainer in their own right.
I love that, because then they have their purpose again, right? Too, doing, they've gotten the help they need. Now they can pass it on to others. And there's no better therapy than helping others. That's actually, that's proven, right? That the person helping benefits more than the person that they're helping. We want to help you guys grow. You guys are doing amazing things. DDS4Vets, advocate for mental wellness, especially for veterans. There's their greater sacrifice than defending a nation overseas. We have to support these brave men and women when they come home. There's just no excuse otherwise. So last one for me, guys, just tell us about how we can do that, how we can help you with the dogs, with the trainers, with, raising money. We want to promote your organization. I'm honored to have you both on with us today. So, Mission Z is we're up here in New York, and we're kind of trying to get the mental health and drug abuse prevention thing going up, up here with Long Island Prep. So we'd love to link up with you. We'd love to, do that as well for all of our struggling vets. So how can we reach out to you? How can people learn about the organization, website, social media? How do we contact you guys?
Paul, can I just bring up something real quick?
Of course.
So that I know we've been talking a lot about the dogs, but we had one Marine that he was addicted to drugs and alcohol, and we were able to help him get into counseling and into a facility, and he did extremely well. And then he had a stroke. And I remember getting the call at 2 a.m, and he was very, obviously upset. He said he had a stroke. The doctor said he'd probably never walk again. But then he was telling me he had some tingling in his legs. I'm like, well, if you have tingling in your legs, you're feeling something. So I said, I'll just relax, and I'll come up there in the morning. And when I spoke to him, they said that, of course, he has to go through the VA. The VA wasn't going to start physical therapy or anything for 45, 60 days. And I said, well, that's not going to work. I said, you need to get up like right now. So I went ahead and got in touch with the Mets at the Met Stadium, and they had a physical therapy department, and for the Mets players. And we were able to go ahead and get him in right away with Dr. Benson. And 8 weeks later, he walked into our gala on a cane.
Wow.
So we got
Wow.
him up and running right away at no cost to him because it didn't go through the VA, so the VA wouldn't pay for that. But we did. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah.
That's something else that we do. Obviously fundraising. We have no paid employees. We do not pay anybody on the board. So all the money goes toward the veterans, toward the dog, with the exception of a small, very small percentage goes to office supplies.
Mhm.
And then of course we pay for the dog to be trained, but nobody gets paid. And I really want to make that clear that, and people can verify that very easily with us, that all that money, that's why we collect the money, to be able to go ahead and help that veteran.
Mhm.
And so fundraising is big. And of course, our big goal is to have our own facility. And because this way here, we could really, how amazing would it be for them to just come in and have everything they need right there, because they're already coming into a place where they're not sure of. So there's a little anxiety, but to have a place where they could come in and relax. And when they leave, they know that they will always have somebody there to help them and they're not alone.
Wow. Fantastic. Yeah, guys. So thank you. Thank you so much, Deb Doherty, Mike Colton. You're doing amazing work. We hope to see you guys up here in New York in May. We're doing our second annual Mental Health Matters Fair. Going to be a night of inspiration over at Mulcahy's, pub and concert hall in Long Island. So we'd love to have you guys come up and let everybody up here know what amazing work you are doing. So thank you so much, DDS4Vets. We want to see you guys grow and do well. And we want to help you do that. So thank you so much, guys, for coming on today.
Thank you so much. We'll see you in May.
I hope so.
Thank
Absolutely. You got it, guys. My pleasure. And of course, thank you to all the listeners here on the Mission Z Empowering Change podcast, sponsored by Long Island Prep. If you're a parent or professional in your community or an educator in your town, don't forget to visit the website, longislandprep.org, to learn more about our 3 pillars of action for drug abuse prevention and mental health awareness, and playpioneersports.com for all things youth sports and to learn more about us and our partnership with them. Don't forget to visit the missionz.com podcast website, smash that subscribe button, and keep your eyes posted for our next episode. I didn't, Deb, I want to keep you for one more second. Can you give us your website? Can you give us some social media handles that you have, or?
Yeah, it's DDS4Vets.org, and it's DDS as in Sam, numerical number 4, vets, VETS.org.
Okay, great. Mike and Deb, thank you so much again. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Bye-bye.